So, thanks for joining us on this special edition of Surviving the Shitstorm. Yeah, it's me, Kieron, the boy Bailey, and I'm in conversation today with Fergal Dooley. Fergal's got a great history in the UK, but for the last few years he's been working over in Washington, DC, and we had a really interesting chat about how that city and that state has been affected by this situation. But the thing that really struck me was the sense of community that Fergal talked about. And I think you're going to really enjoy that and really going to get something from it because it will feel familiar to you, because that is one of the joys of hospitality. So thanks very much for our sponsors for making this happen. We've got the guys at Vita Mojo, we've got the guys at HGEM and Tahola, all putting their money where their mouth is at a time when a lot of people are not. So thank you very much. Enjoy the conversation with Fergal. I most certainly did.
I suppose we have the other extreme where we want Mr. Trump wants to open in 2 weeks' time.
Oh, mate.
So, you know.
I mean, really, that should really be our starting point, if I'm honest with you. That should really be our starting point. I've got so many questions around Mr. Trump.
Yeah, well, I mean, in one sense, they've just, they've just authorized this, like, $2 trillion, dollar kind of bailout stimulus package, which is huge. They're giving 350 billion to small businesses, 250 billion to employees. That the way they're talking about distributing it, like every person who's been made unemployed is going to get a check for $1,200. Every person under the salary of 75,000. And every couple up to 150,000 will get a check for 2,500. So I mean, it's kind of something. And then obviously there's a lot in it for small businesses. I mean, I suppose in terms of, I'm very close to DC. It's kind of where I've worked really. And there's a big kind of there's a big camaraderie between kind of industry people. I think I mentioned in the group the other day.
Yeah, you said there's a Facebook group where everyone kind of comes together. There's a Facebook
group, yeah, like called District Industry, and it's everything from owners, operators, hourly paid staff, everybody. I mean, it's a group of 9,000 people.
Wow, so that's huge.
Huge, yeah, it's huge. You know what I mean? It covers everything. I mean, long before this ever happened, but it's a great kind of support network for people. I mean, people advertise jobs on it. They offer advice. There's also another group called DC Craft Bartenders Guild. Again, which hold kind of monthly events. I mean, it's a very, they're very involved in it here. I mean, it's I suppose hospitality is the third largest employer in the US. I mean, there's 17 million people in the industry here. So, it's a huge part of the economy for them. So, they've done a lot, in the last kind of week. I mean, we're a little bit ahead of you guys in terms of, what they closed down and when. But the other thing is it's slightly different here because you've got, obviously, states are kind of run like small countries. So, I mean, the governor will decide, we're closing down the state, which has happened pretty much from the area that we're like in DC. You have basically what's called the DMV, which is DC, Maryland, and Virginia. It's like the triangle. Mm-hmm. And they're all basically border each other. I actually live in Maryland, which is 30 minutes from the center of DC. So, the governor will decide, no, we're closing everything down and that's it. And they did that very quickly here. Virginia were a little bit slower. DC were kind of pretty much behind Maryland. So they've been very quick. And, in terms of what they've done, and what the industry people have done for each other, I mean, when everything was closed down, kind of finally when they said, look, there's no more kind of trading or whatever, they picked one kind of central place called Hook Hall, which is it's a kind of a big bar or whatever. And they decided that they would take all of their kind of unused food there. And basically the sort of, I suppose, this district industry group basically rallied everybody, got all the food there and said, look, anybody who's in the industry, obviously you've now been cut off, you've got no cash, come here, pick up whatever you want, for free. There's food for as long as you want it, and we'll keep replenishing it. So, that's been really kind of useful for a lot of people.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, it's really, really good. And there's been a lot of support. And I mean, in terms of, there's also within this kind of district industry group, there's a couple of journalists who are kind of food critics and stuff like that. They've been very involved. And they're also very involved with the mayor and the council in DC. And they've been kind of filtering through information in terms of how to get your employment. They've basically put online, this is how, giving them the, what's this, and they've hit problems. There's one journalist in particular who's kind of a go-between kind of the head counselor who looks after kind of unemployment and stuff like that. So they've been literally they've had in 10 days, 20,000 people sign on for unemployment.
That's huge.
It's been a massive, it's a huge thing. I mean, it's a small city. I mean, it's only, normally the population of DC is like 650,000. But when kind of capitals and Senate and everything is in, it's about doubles. But I mean, literally, it's been, quite hard. So, I mean, all the businesses have kind of, kind of come together and said, look, we'll, organize your food for you. Once they get their unemployment, I think they're all going to be entitled to something like $444. Hourly staff, I think, get $444 per week, which is nothing really, kind of, because they live on tips here. Everything is tips. They make a lot of money. But they've also kind of set up this district industry page. Has also set up a virtual tip jar, which is really
that's very cool.
Which is a very cool idea. What they did is basically set up a Google Docs document, and they said, look, if you're an hourly employee, we want you to put your details down, where you work, what your name is, what your Venmo or Cash App is, and then people can just log on to that. It's on various things like Eater DC. There's another one called Destination DC. They put it around kind of a lot of public forums. And people can literally go on and just tip you, drop you $20 or whatever.
So are they tipping their favorite bartender? They're tipping their favorite server?
Yeah,
nice.
Pretty much. That's how it works. So it's been a really cool idea. And from what I've seen kind of within the Facebook group, people are actually getting tipped. And they're saying, somebody dropped me $20, somebody dropped me $50, somebody dropped me $200, so it's been quite cool. And again, there's a lot of kind of GoFundMe pages for various businesses and stuff like that. There's a lot kind of going on. They've been very proactive about it. So it's been, I suppose it's tough for a lot of people. I mean, and also they passed a law here to say that businesses couldn't be evicted, and they froze all utilities, froze all rents, all mortgages. So, businesses are kind of protected a little bit. I mean, they reckon that 30% of businesses won't come out of this, which is quite sad, because I think DC it's just been kind of named this year as the new kind of up and coming foodie city in the US. Yeah. And there's a lot of cool kind of very small independents who are kind of, I don't know if you've ever heard James Beard Awards and stuff like that. But they're like kind of they're very kind of it's for like up and coming chefs. They're come out on a yearly basis. They're very, very cool. If you get a James Beard Award, you're set. And there's a few have come up kind of this year in DC. There's best up and coming chef. There's a lot of kind of very diverse food. There's a lot of kind of I suppose one of the cool things at the moment is Filipino food. It seems to be really cool. I mean, there's a restaurant here called Bad Saint, which basically has 14 seats. It's owned by a guy called Tom Connellan, who's a Filipino guy. I think he's brought up in the US, but he won a James Beard Award this year for best chef Mid-Atlantic or whatever. But it's got 14 seats. It has hours queues outside it. And it's Filipino food. And there's another guy who's just opened up as well called James Wozniak, who again is another kind of, he's not even Filipino, he's from South America, but he's opened a Filipino restaurant. So it seems to be something really kind of, there's a lot going on in the industry here. But it's a really tight-knit community. Everybody knows everybody supports each other's businesses. When they go into a bar that they know somebody, they'll basically drop $100 tip to the bartender, and that bartender then the next night maybe go to that bar and drop that bartender $100. So it's a very nice community to work in. It's a very friendly community. It's very there's a lot of support there. They don't. Everybody's kind of, I suppose in terms of competition, everybody's a little bit competitive and everybody wants the business, but it's really about the industry as a whole. So you kind of notice like a lot going on sort of that's very industry based as opposed to individual business based at the moment. So and I mean, same as the UK, a lot of people have been furloughed. Similar, I suppose, hotels have shut down. Pretty much kind of everything is shut for at least a month probably.
The 30% that you sort of think that might not make it through, or that it's being suggested may not make it through, is that because they're just not good enough to make it through, and potentially, that's natural selection at work, or is that actually the support isn't maybe enough, or they just didn't have enough cash in the bank?
I think it's a little bit a combination of all things, really, Kieron, to be honest. I mean, it's become, I suppose over the last kind of, DC is a very funny kind of city. So there's a lot of very cool areas that are very kind of up and coming and whatever. And it's a very fickle city because once a cool new area comes along, everybody goes to the cool new area. So, you've got to really kind of, there's been a lot of regeneration within the city. I think probably 15 years ago, DC was a place that you wouldn't even go into. It was a lot of gun crime, very dangerous, and it's really kind of cleaned up. And then, they've opened up a lot of kind of areas. Southeast of the city was like pretty much you wouldn't even go into it. Then they opened kind of the baseball park is down there. There's a lot of new built apartments. They built a new kind of soccer stadium down there where you've got Team DC United there. And it's become, kind of, I suppose, they're regenerating a lot of areas. So it's, I think the hard part is that's caused rents to go up, similar to London. And so people, every kind of Tom, Dick and Harry is kind of opened a restaurant thinking, I've got the next cool thing. And, the rent has suddenly gone up. And then, suddenly a new area of town becomes a cool place to go. And everybody leaves that area of town. And suddenly you're left with kind of a restaurant that's a year old or 2 years old. And it's not in the cool area of town anymore. So, it's kind of like, it's a struggle. I mean, you do have, it's very different to London as well, where you've got central London and whatever. Here, DC is very much built around neighborhoods. There's no central part to DC. So you have a lot of neighborhoods where you've got a lot of neighborhood restaurants, and people in that neighborhood will support that restaurant. And then you've got some kind of, I suppose, areas that are kind of the cool parts of town now, where they've built kind of the new football stadium and stuff. It's an area called Navy Yard, where you've got a lot of kind of new businesses, and it's the cool part of town. You've got the wharf, which is down by the river, which is kind of relatively new over the last couple of years. We've got a few hotels and a couple of really cool businesses open up. And they'll do well because during the summer it's by the water and whatever. But then there's other parts of town. Even I've only been here 3 years, but even 3 years I've been here, it's kind of moved from where the cool part of town was to a different part of town now. So it's kind of there's a certain element of that will kill people, because when it does come to the point where they unfreeze the rents and you have to pay back whatever you owe, it's going to really hit people hard. I think what they're proposing at the moment in terms of the cash they're giving out to people, that will support them now through the tough time, just to keep keep the doors closed. But when they reopen, that's the next question: what happens then? So I think that's kind of the unknown.
So to be clear, the landlords there, they've stopped rent. So it's not that they've kind of over here. So this week, probably today or tomorrow, Parliament will vote through the forfeiture moratorium, so they will not be able to take those sites back, which has been a massive concern for a lot of businesses. However, landlords are not being overly helpful. There's a huge campaign to try and get them to be a little bit more flexible, but they're thinking about their own needs, they're thinking about their own concerns and their own issues.
Of course, yeah.
Obviously, kind of in the WhatsApp group that we met, you've got people talking about the fact that they're being told that they face repossession of their equipment and all that kind of stuff, and locks being changed. And I've heard stories today of threats of violence towards people. It's kind of like, wow, this is. I know we're all feeling the pressure, but let's dial that down just a little bit.
But surely that's illegal. Surely they can't go into your building and obviously if there's a moratorium on rent, the rent's been frozen. Surely they can't go into your building and repossess your equipment or take control of your equipment. Surely that's against the law.
You would hope so, but I think, again, from chatting to a couple of people who are quite involved in that process, because this is obviously so very, very fast moving, and this is law being drafted, there are potentially loopholes that very smart landlords with very expensive lawyers will be able to find their way through those loopholes. And that's kind of part of the challenge, I guess, to be fair. And I think any of us, when laws are being changed, then we know full well that mistakes are going to be made. It's difficult to get it right first time. So
it's the cat and mouse game, isn't it?
Yeah, it very much is.
Trying to stay one step ahead. Exactly. So I don't know. As I say, the frozen rents here and everything, but that's all well and good. But what happens when that no longer becomes? Obviously the landlords will want their money. Whether they try and get ahead of the game now, and then suddenly the government say, well, okay, this is the situation, you can have your rent, but you have it over a 12-month or 24-month period or whatever the case may be, rather than demanding it up front. Because if they demand it up front, they're going to kill everything. They just won't be able to weather the storm, which would be a real shame because, as I say, I mean, like DC is one of these really up and coming cool cities, and I think it would be absolute disaster if they, if they try and do that, they'll just end up with a lot of empty buildings.
And what effect do you think that will have on the hospitality scene in DC in the long term if they do that?
Well, I mean, like over the last kind of year or so, I mean, I've done a bit of consulting over the last kind of year or so, year and a bit, for some businesses, and in parts of town that were kind of, I suppose, not that much in favor. I mean, really, I did a bit of consulting for somebody who was actually an Irish guy, who was trying to get his business ready for sale, and I was really there just to kind of tidy it up and try and make it look good and get a bit more extra cash to the door. But I mean, it's difficult. I mean, obviously you're losing kind of some businesses that have been around for a very, very long time, that suddenly have had huge rent increases, like what's happened in London, very similar situation. And I don't know. I mean, it's hard to know what will happen, really. I mean, you might have some very established people go, do you know what? I've struggled for 10 or 15 years, managed to keep my head above water, and this is just the final nail in the coffin. Whether that will happen, I don't know.
Real shame if it did.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of more established business, that will, and I think the same thing is going to happen here that pretty much has happened in London over like 5 or 10 years. I mean, the large companies, unfortunately, will be the ones that will survive, because they've got the cash behind them. The independents, who knows, that's the unfortunate thing. I think you'll see a lot of groups and high street stores, taking over bigger sites, and that would be it, which would be a real shame because, as I said, DC is one of these places that kind of has a lot of independents that are quite cool and quirky, and to lose them would be a real shame.
And that's where it gets frustrating, isn't it? Because I think Joe Public doesn't want a homogenized high street. They want variety. They want the independence. They want the kind of the new, the interesting, the kind of the sexy stuff. They don't want just a whole load of brands. But the challenge will be is that, and it's going to be the same here, really, that the brands are the ones who've got the cash flow reserves,
exactly,
who can sit back and say, you know what, I can go for 3 months without being open. Looking at there's the restaurant group over here, obviously one of the biggest over here, and they're modelling for a 3-month closure, which for most people is going to absolutely destroy them. But the restaurant group is kind of going, you know what, we'll get through this. We'll get through
it. We've got the reserves, we've got the banks behind us. The banks know we can regenerate that cash. For a small business to try and come back from being closed for 3 months is next to impossible. It's like you're living. I think a lot of them are probably living week to week or month to month. And even the small businesses here. I mean, obviously the average spend and stuff here is a lot different too. I mean, even on casual dining, the average spend is much larger than it is in the UK. But in saying that, everything is relative. The rents are obviously higher. I mean, the one thing that they don't have is, staff costs are relatively low. I mean, they're paying, the minimum wage. I think the way it's done here, it's slightly different to the UK as well. I mean, they declare their tips because obviously the tips are the majority of their earnings. So I mean, they're probably the business pays them, $2.50 an hour, whatever. But there is a law in place where they have to earn a minimum $14 or $15 an hour. Now, if their tips, if you're a part-time employee and their tips obviously don't match up to the number of hours and they don't make the $15 an hour, then the business has to chop that up.
Okay.
So, it's a slightly different model. So, how that's going to pan out. I mean, basically what they've done here, they've basically laid everybody off. Every business has laid everybody off. So, they're not, I suppose, or furloughed, whichever way you want to call it. But, they're pretty much not paying anybody. And
furloughed is the word of the day over here at the moment. I think it's
it's something you've never really heard in the UK.
You know what? I said to somebody on Twitter that I am fully across the use of the word furlough only from my enjoyment of watching The West Wing. When the US government gets closed down, everybody gets furloughed. I'm like, I know where we're at now. That's cool. But a lot of people are like, what the hell is this? What does it even make any sense?
Well, I think it was probably last January, where they basically had the government shutdown. And I mean, that hurt DC massively because the government shut down for a month. So you've got to kind of bear in mind that, like I said, the population of DC is probably 650,000 people. And then when kind of, government is in, it doubles. So when government is out, obviously it goes back to that 650,000 people. But within that 650,000 people, there's a lot of people connected to the government. So you have a lot of kind of attorneys, non-profits, all that kind of stuff relies on the government being in. And when it's not, it basically kills everything. So, I mean, not January just gone by, but the previous January, the government had shut down. So nothing moved for pretty much 6 weeks. So you can imagine hospitality was dead for 6 weeks of the year last year. So, people were just kind of recovering from that. And now obviously this has happened. So that hurt businesses massively last year. There was a lot of businesses closed down due to it. So, they're feeling the pain again this year, which is literally on a year after kind of having a lot of pain last year. So, and again, all the government, were basically on furlough last year. So they're pretty much, because they're all contractors as well, they rely on the government being in. So the government isn't in, they don't get paid.
That's really interesting, isn't it? So DC has basically had a dry run for the shitstorm that we find ourselves in right now.
Pretty much.
Do you think that's helped? Do you think that's helped with the preparation, the way that people have responded to it?
I think people, I suppose, there's a lot of panic within kind of the industry about, I think the first worry for a lot of people was, how am I going to pay my rent? Because it's not cheap to live in DC. I mean, you like a bog standard apartment. I mean, I moved out of DC probably about 18 months ago, but I lived right in kind of a very cool part of DC, which is called Adams Morgan, which is a bit kind of like Camden. And I was paying $2,000 a month for a 1-bedroom 600 square foot apartment. So it's not cheap to live in DC. And I think that was the main thing. The first thing that people were like, how am I going to, keep a roof over my head? And I suppose the second thing was like, how am I going to eat? So, that's obviously where the industry stepped in and said, listen, we will provide food for as long as you need it. If you're really, really stuck, obviously we want people who are really stuck to, take advantage of it. But, that was kind of the next thing was like, okay, I've got a roof over my head because they've frozen the rents. And now at least I can eat. So, it's kind of the two major things that were tackled pretty quickly. So, yeah, I think that was the main concerns really.
Bold move, I have to say, to freeze the rents is a really, really bold move, and not something that's been remotely considered here. Mortgage holidays have been offered. I myself have taken my mortgage holiday. You know what? As a supplier, as a consultant, I'm looking at my books and thinking, you know what? I won't be earning anything now for at least 6 months. So what am I going to do with that time? You've got to be sensible about it, and that's about as far as it's gone. But
and I mean,
the rent market's much bigger.
Yeah, I think they were just very conscious of, hourly employees, especially being on the streets. I think it's just kind of like, okay, hang on a second. We've got to make sure that we protect people. And then they also brought a law in that landlords couldn't threaten or evict. So, not just from a business point of view, but from a private point of view as well. So, I mean, at least people are, they're protected in terms of they've got a roof over their heads. I mean, obviously that rent is going to have to come back at some stage. But again, I would imagine the government will step back in again and say, well, you can't just demand people because, they've gone through all this to protect people and keep a roof over their heads. I'd imagine they will put another law in place to say that you have to, they'll pay it over a period of time or whatever the way, they work it out with their landlord. But, I have seen kind of some comments on the district industry Facebook group of where people have, had landlords threatening them with eviction and everything else. And again, there's a couple of people on the district industry page who are attorneys who kind of are ex-bartenders or do a bit of bartending on the sides for fun. And there's one in particular actually that specializes in housing. And she kind of stepped in and said, I will do any work for you pro bono. I will not allow any landlord to threaten you or evict you. Again, through the district industry side, again, there's a lot of support there legally. So it's amazing. Like, what you see kind of going on this side, there's a lot of, you get all sorts, people moving out of apartments, selling their furniture, somebody, offering jobs or somebody giving support. And, have you ever come across this? And there's always somebody that can step in and advise. So again, it's a hugely useful kind of group to be in.
It's something that's quite unique about our industry, isn't it? I think we're built to care. We're built to look after each other. We're built to look after people. So that idea, when the brown stuff starts to fly, then we start to defend each other. We start to protect each other. And it's one of the things I love most of our industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like I said, there seems to be an awful lot of support out there for people. So nobody kind of feels like they've been left high and dry, and certainly I think, hospitality being such a huge industry here, there's a lot of support. There's a lot of people out there that will help. And I think, I think the industry is slightly different here as well. I think, I know there's been a lot of things, going on in the UK in terms of calling people low skilled. Here it's completely opposite. I think people going into bars, restaurants have a lot of respect for the people that work there. And they treat them very well. They tip well when they get good service. And I know, you see a lot of people who become friends across the bar, or in a restaurant. It's there's a great kind of mutual respect, which is kind of a real different world compared to what it is in the UK.
Well, I think the sad thing is, I think there is a good degree of that within the UK. I think with the general public, I think it's our government at the moment who seem quietly intent on labelling every person in our industry as being low skilled and untalented. Now, if I'm honest, I don't know about you, Fergal, but when I left school with 5 very poor, low grade GCSEs to my name. That was about it. Hospitality has given me the chance to say, you know what, I'm good at some stuff. I'm good at people empathizing. We're creating relationships. I'm good at kind of actually caring about people. So it gave me the chance personally to say, well, actually, I will have a career rather than just a job. And our government just that whole low skilled thing. It really went off for probably about 3 weeks before this kind of started to come along. So I would imagine there's somebody somewhere feeling some peace. Probably Priti Patel, our Home Secretary at the moment. She's the one who's kind of calling us low skilled.
Yeah, the low skilled. So,
she's probably the one who's feeling the most peace right now because nobody's shouting at her about this. But they will come back. It will come back because what's happened is, the people who are being classed as key workers right now, the people who are being told you should still go out on the streets, there are a lot of those people who were called low skilled about 2 weeks ago. It's the cleaners, it's the nurses, it's the carers. They are those people who are like us in hospitality. We're labelled as those low skilled fools who that we could probably live without, and just we'd be fine. Well, I think it's been demonstrated that actually that's not the case. It's not the case at all.
I mean, I've done a bit of kind of, I did a bit of consulting, but I've done sort of the whole reason I actually came out here was to oversee a project for a hotel, a refurb of their F&B outlets, and which is actually an Irish-owned hotel. They've got hotels in London. But when I came out here, there was something I kind of discovered that, one, there's a huge difference in terms of the way they operate with people. Just the whole HR system is completely different. I mean, it's will to work is what they call it. So basically anybody can be fired at any time for no reason, pretty much.
Disconcerting.
Yeah, pretty much. And the hotels, not so much the restaurants and bars, but the hotels are unionized. Not all of them. The hotel I was actually in was not unionized. But there's a huge fear of the union here. The union basically come in and they call the shots. They tell you how you're running your business. You don't decide. And they dictate the wages. They dictate when there's pay rises. And they basically have union representatives. So everybody from your dishwasher to your it covers your hourly staff. So basically, like everybody from your dishwasher to your servers to your bartenders, they have an issue, they go to the union. They don't argue about it. The union, argues for them. And basically, they will call an all-out strike if you bend the rules. So it's quite a different way. I mean, the unions obviously have been around for years, but one of the things I actually found quite funny, there's a union handbook. I did a bit of consultancy work for a unionized hotel, and there was a union handbook, and one of the things that was actually in the handbook was that every chef, now I'm sure this is going back to probably the 50s or 60s or whatever, every chef is entitled to have 3 beers a day. So and apparently it's to do with not being dehydrated in the heat. So literally you have all these chefs walking around the kitchen, they're drinking beers. It's crazy. It's just bizarre. But if you're in a unionized hotel, they guarantee you pay union dues obviously, but you're guaranteed a pension. Your benefits are all taken care of. We'll say somebody like a food runner earns $22 an hour. An hourly rate of $22 an hour plus tips. So these guys are earning a lot of money. I mean, this particular hotel I was in was a huge banqueting hotel. It's actually where Trump did a lot of. They do all the inaugurations and stuff there. It's a huge, huge hotel. It's 1 million square feet. It's huge, 825 bedrooms or one. But huge unionized hotel. But literally, there's people who've been there for. There was a guy who'd been there 54 years because the benefits are so good. They don't leave, and it's impossible to get rid of them. So you've got guys working there who's 70 or 80. They're just carrying on because the benefits are so good.
Why would you leave? I guess is the answer.
Well, that's the thing, and I think they have. They also have. You've got banquet servers who are earning 150 grand a year. So it's a different world here than it is in the UK.
It really is.
It's a whole pile different, but in some sense, I think very, very good. And they, like I say, they have great respect for people who work in hospitality. And just the general public, I think they treat people very well, and they tip well to get good service.
As is right. So we started off with Mr. Trump, and we started off with his his idea that kind of come Easter weekend, wasn't it? I think April 17th or something, and that he thinks you're going to be back on track. Feeling optimistic about that?
Well, basically, I suppose, to be honest here, the way it works is that the governors in each state decide. He doesn't really decide, to be honest. They call the shots. And, we have a Republican governor at the moment who, you would expect he would be very like Trump, but he's not actually. And he's actually done a really good job in terms of containing everything and, making sure people are getting looked after. And he's said all the right things and done all the right things. So in terms of where I am, we're very, very lucky. Virginia, they were very slow to kind of shut everything down. Up until a few days ago, they were still allowing bars to be open. Wow. So again, like I say, it's down to the particular governor. We've got the mayor of DC, who, again, she is super. She's great. She's a real kind of people person. She's nothing like Trump, very sensible. And again, she has kind of fought for all. I think she's actually very in touch with the hospitality business. I've met her a couple of times. She's a lovely lady, but she's kind of fought for all the right things and put everything in place, and set up the whole kind of unemployment benefit situation very, very quickly. And she's been really fast to make sure that people are not. There's normally kind of a waiting time of a week or whatever, and there's normally kind of other things you have to be, you have to say that you're actually looking for a job, and they've cut all that out of the actual application, the online application. You just bypass all that now, so they've managed to do that really quickly to make sure that people aren't left waiting. So,
they really have just simplified everything as best as possible.
Yeah. I think it's just they've gone, look, people need X, Y, and Z. Let's give them X, Y, and Z. Or let's make it easy for them to get X, Y, and Z. There's no overcomplicating. There's no kind of overthinking of everything. I've seen kind of stuff on the, on the group kind of going, is this, this allowance for employees if you're 2,500, is it net or gross or whatever, blah, 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 blah. And, people are kind of seem to be having to think a lot about what has actually been offered. Is it this been offered? Is that been offered? It's very, very clear here for people. It's been made really clear about in terms of their unemployment benefit. Obviously, this whole stimulus package that's just been approved, that's still a little bit fluffy, and nobody's really quite sure how they're going to administer that. But it's been granted, and I suppose the detail will come. But it's been
is that going to be kind of in the form of loans to the businesses or grants? What would that look like, do you think?
It's pretty much cash, I think. I don't think it would be loans. I think I think their main concern here is that they don't want to go into recession. And that's why, literally, like as I said, they're talking about sending out checks to every single person that's been furloughed, a cash check, of like $1,200 if you earn under 75,000. You'll get a check for $1,200. That's the kind of where it's at the moment, and that will be kind of free money, for everybody. And I think that's really to kind of keep them spending. It's just, it's a stimulus package to try and keep the economy. I mean, obviously the stock market's been hit hugely here as well. They've had to suspend trading on a few occasions because it's just gone through the floor. It's starting to come back a little bit. But I think the main concern for them is that they get this money out and that people, either use it now to keep businesses running, whatever's open, or, it will be saved for when we kind of come out of all this, and then people will be able to keep spending. Just really to keep the economy going. I think that's the thoughts behind it.
Makes perfect sense.
It's a huge amount of money, but I mean, obviously, if it's going back into the economy, then well and good. I suppose their view is that it's not leaving the country; it's just going around the circular flow of income, really, isn't it? So it'll keep businesses going.
No one's leaving the country anymore, are they?
Yeah, exactly. So it's just going back into the economy. So I think in one sense it's a very good idea. Say how it's going to be administered. I mean, I know they've kind of outlined that there's 250 billion for unemployed. There's 350 billion for small businesses. There's another 250 billion for, I think, business loans or something. So they obviously have kind of worked out where they're actually splitting it out to. How they actually administer it, I suppose, is the next thing. But it's there, so I think that's kind of reassuring for a lot of people.
I think having that in the back of your head takes a lot of pressure off a lot of people.
Yeah.
No doubt.
And I think they will. I think I saw something yesterday. I think if you've got if you're a small business up to 50 people, you can get 25,000 or 50,000 or something. But you've got to apply for it. But they will, obviously get your applications in. I think it's if you employ 50 people, you can apply for a grant of 25,000, which will probably keep payroll going at least for a little while. So we'll see. So
it sounds like they're taking some really proactive steps.
Yeah, they seem to be kind of at the moment they seem to be kind of on it. So who knows what's going to happen? But we're literally getting, like, the governor of the state is on the news every morning at 11 a.m. with an update of what's happening and any new things that they need to do or anything they need to curtail. And obviously the other thing is they were very kind of proactive in terms of saying, listen, it started off with groups of 250 down to 50, then it was 10. And then they were like, okay, well, people can't seem to adhere to not going out and being in groups. So they literally have the National Guard out, and if you're kind of out and about, obviously, supermarkets and stuff are fine, but there's no socializing. There's a big festival in DC every year called the Cherry Blossom, where they've got all these cherry blossom trees which are down near the monument and stuff, and it's a huge kind of festival every year, and it's kind of high bloom is when everybody comes out and whatever, and high bloom was at the weekend. They closed the whole area off and they had the National Guard there to basically stop crowds from coming in. So they basically closed down centers of cities and stuff. So people seem to be kind of staying at home. Obviously, I'm actually parked outside a supermarket at the moment. There's quite a few people out and about, obviously getting food shopping and stuff. But apart from that, there's nobody really out. You see pictures of the city; they're dead.
And how does it feel? As do you still feel like a visitor? Is America home now? What is it? Is that where you'll be?
Well, yeah, I'm a green card holder now. I'm actually married to an American girl. Pretty much, for me, I think I spent a long time in London. I spent 15 years in London on and off. But when I came out to DC, it was a very kind of, it's actually a very nice city, a lot of green space. It's not like New York, where there's loads of, skyscrapers. It's a very low city. There's no buildings over 12 stories. So it's basically, you have the monument, which is about 12 stories high, and nothing is allowed to be higher than the monument. So it's quite a low city. Very nice. Like I say, there's no center to DC. It's full of neighborhoods. So you can kind of walk along, and it's nothing like when you're in the middle of the city, you can walk along and it's all residential housing. And then suddenly you're walking to a neighborhood and there's loads of bars and restaurants. Then you can walk through that and you'll see nothing again for another mile. So it's really odd. There's no real shopping center here. It's all shopping malls, which are kind of outside of DC. So it's a very strange city, but I actually like the vibe in DC. It's a very friendly city. It's very cosmopolitan because you have a lot of the embassies and there's a lot of international business.
Mm-hmm.
So it actually feels quite European, because there's a lot of people from all over the place. So it's a very diverse city. And like I said,
So
that helps a lot.
How does it feel when you see the National Guard on the streets? Because I kind of feel like if the army were deployed to the streets here, which I think at some point is going to have to happen because people are not paying enough attention to the concept that we're on lockdown. I think it would shock people here massively. How do folks respond there?
I think they're probably a little bit more used to it here since kind of 9/11 and stuff, and obviously being the capital, you're used to seeing a lot of cops around the place. You're used to seeing kind of, a lot of law enforcement, so I don't think it's that off-putting for people. And I think, like I say, because, once kind of Congress shuts down, everything shuts down, it's pretty much empty anyway. So, it's really about, at the moment, it's about kind of keeping people inside, and they tend to be sticking to it, really. So, like, I suppose I live outside of DC, so I don't really see much of it, to be honest. Where I am, you wouldn't even know anything was going on, apart from the businesses that are closed, kind of local bars and restaurants and stuff like that. But apart from that, you wouldn't really notice any difference.
It is an interesting one. I guess, obviously, kind of people are comfortable over there with it. To say there's a lot of police and all of those police carry guns. We see guns here, and it's like, whoa!
That's the other thing. I mean, you're walking, walking around, and everybody, the cops are all carrying guns and stuff. So it's kind of, it's kind of the norm. It's not really anything that out of the ordinary. I suppose what you're seeing is kind of guys standing on street corners, whatever. And I suppose they kind of see it, in another sense, they kind of see it for their protection. If anything else, I mean, obviously you've got, the gun shops and stuff apparently are getting sold out again. Where I live is not, there isn't loads of gun shops around. I think Virginia, it's quite different. Virginia seems to be somewhere that people are very pro gun.
Yes.
You see a lot of gun stores and stuff there, but where I am, not so much. But I think they kind of feel a little bit reassured that maybe the National Guard are on the streets, and they're there to kind of help. They're not there as a hindrance. I think they're there kind of to assist people more than anything else. And I suppose they're deterrent as well to not kind of be gathering around in huge groups of people. But DC is quite a touristy city as well because of kind of, you've got the capital and you've obviously got the monuments and you've got museums and all that kind of stuff. And I suppose that's all stopped. So that's quite a lot of people that would be coming into the city as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of stopped all that. So, in terms of, the people that are here are the people that would normally be working in the bars, the restaurants, whatever. They're all, they're all locked up. I think most of them are drinking, to be honest.
Yeah, drinking and feeling glad about having a roof over their heads.
Pretty much, yeah, that's pretty much it. You're seeing lots of pictures on this District Ninja group of people's home bars, and it's amazing.
It's quite impressive, I guess, actually.
It's quite impressive. So I think, they're kind of going, this is my home bar. I'm like, wow, my local bar doesn't have that much booze.
Yeah,
so
I'm now envious, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's interesting. But yeah, I mean, look, I think it's, I think people would love if things just got back to normal, but I think they're also kind of conscious of the fact that unless they stay in and they do as they're told, it's going to take a lot longer. So yeah, I don't know, we'll wait and see.
A little bit of common sense is a beautiful thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of where, the whole thing is here in terms of this area, I mean, I think probably 2 weeks ago we had 300 and something odd cases. Now we've got, or I think in the whole of US was 300 odd cases. Now there's 40 something thousand, in the space of 2 weeks or a week or whatever. And I mean, it's in the States where I am, it's increased a lot over the last couple of weeks as well. But, look, I suppose people have been told they're being careful, they're being told to stay in, they're being told to do whatever. I think New York seems to be a real hot spot. I think Seattle seems to be a real hot spot. I think DC is not really one of the worst, or the area we are is not really one of the worst. So I think people aren't kind of overly concerned. They seem to be doing as they're told, and pretty much hopefully we get out of it pretty soon. But I think
fingers crossed.
Easter deadline. I think the Easter deadline's probably expecting a bit much.
The man's a born optimist. That's the only way to describe him, obviously.
Well, that's it. I think, probably there's a lot of, I think it probably is happening in the UK as well. A lot of the local distilleries and breweries and stuff are making their sanitizer and
yes,
bring it out and about and whatever. But yeah, apart from that, it's it's pretty much kind of keep your head down and hopefully things blow over soon enough.
That felt hopeful to me. That doesn't feel like the apocalypse is truly coming. It feels like they're actually, you know what, there's light at the tunnel. You know, we might not be quite near it yet, but there is definitely light there, and it is definitely going to be getting a little bit bigger. And for me, that's the joy of this. I think this whole thing, you know, the initial shock and distress of it is undoubtedly, it's hard for people. But once you kind of get beyond that first moment, you start thinking, actually, this is going to create a huge amount of opportunity for some really innovative people to step forward. And there's going to be some people who are going to lose their business, and that's obviously very sad. But you know what? Some of those people probably shouldn't be there. If I'm entirely honest with you, you know, there are some businesses where you look at and think, would we be better off? Would the high street be worse off without you on it?
Yeah, well, exactly.
Possibly not.
But I think in a lot of senses, I mean, this is, I think people will come out with, a bigger hunger to do business and, will appreciate things a little bit more. And, I think there's like I said, there's a big kind of an industry family here. But there's also an awful lot of people who are in the industry and they're there because of the benefits and because of, they work in hotels and it's not necessarily what they want to do, but they get good health benefits and health insurance is so expensive and you have to have it. And, maybe they'll go, do you know what? This is probably the best thing that's ever happened to me. I'm not built for hospitality. I need to go and do something else, and maybe they go and they look at other opportunities. Who knows? I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things. I think, a lot of things will come out of this. People will, either come out with a bigger hunger to be in the business, to become more passionate, to work harder. Who knows? But I would like to think some good will come out of it, which I think it will. I think, obviously, like you say, there's going to be a lot of businesses hurt, but, the fittest and the best will survive, I think. And if they really want it, they'll find a way. So
isn't that just the truth? Isn't that just the truth?
Yeah.
Well, I've taken loads of your time. I've really enjoyed talking to you.
You too.
If people are listening to this and thinking, you know what, I want to hear more from Fergal, where can they find you? What's the deal? Do you do social media? You're on Twitter? Tell me you're on Twitter.
I am on Twitter, yes. I'm just at Fergal Dooley. That's it. Really simple. I'm on Facebook.
That simplicity.
Yeah, I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I think all under the same name.
You were winning in life with that simplicity. I went straight to I went straight to I have this kind of, I create a lot of video content where I just have a million opinions and I'll just tell them anybody and everybody who'll listen, and it's done under the idea of the Boy Bailey. And there's a guy in Ireland, I think he is, who's got the name the Boy Bailey on Twitter, and he just hasn't used it in 5 years. And I'm like, dude, just hand it over.
Just give it to me. Yeah, exactly.
I'll give you money. I will give you money. Just reply to me. I got all excited when Twitter said they were going to go. Twitter were going on a cull of inactive accounts, and I was like, yes, I'll get it. And it's like, no, he's still there. So you've gone straight in with Fergal Dooley. Amazing. Yep. Well, we'll make sure we throw that in the in notes, and I'll throw up your LinkedIn profile up on there as well, so people can kind of get in touch and see what you're all about, because it's been a really good conversation. I think you've got obviously a great grip on what's going on over there with a super background over here. And for me, I reckon maybe in a couple of weeks we could potentially do this again and see kind of what's changed. We can either be celebrating, or maybe we'll do it over a drink and make each other feel better.
Well, look, Kieron, I'll keep you posted of kind of things that are happening here. I think, probably, I think the things for kind of you guys is really kind of, what like, as I say, what works over here, there's a massive Facebook group, and it has everybody from operators to hourly staff to everybody pitches in, everybody has an opinion, and I mean, it's a great forum for people to actually, find out a lot of information. There's a great support network as well. I think that's probably, and potentially, I don't know whether it's something that would work as much over there as here, is the virtual tip jar, and it's something that maybe people might get on board with. I don't know. They may not.
We have Hospitality Action over here, who are a charity who work with hospitality workers. They've done a thing with a company called Tip Jar. So Tip Jar is you can scan a QR code, and you can. In a restaurant, if I'm a server, I would have my QR code on my ID or something, or on my pot, and I would scan that, and it would go directly into that person into their account, which I think
great,
is a really cool idea. And Hospitality Action have started working with Tipjar on allowing people to be able to donate. So I don't think we can donate to people specifically, but you can donate to city and to area, which obviously is a win, to be fair. You know, you've got people who you know need the help. So yeah, I think there's definitely stuff to be done there. I think the Facebook group sounds amazing, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great forum, and I mean, it's like I said, I was really stunned when I first got here and I joined the group. And obviously, you have, it's a private group, so you've got to go through, they obviously vet you and make sure you're in the industry and whatever before they'll actually let you join. But there's lots of spin-off groups like the GC Craft Bartenders Guild, and there's other, and they arrange monthly meetups and various other events and stuff, and they're just really, really good group to be involved in, and it keeps you kind of abreast of what's going on. It keeps you very up to date, with changes or anything that's kind of any legal things that are happening. At one stage there was a thing called Initiative 77, where there was basically a group who were government backed trying to put a cap on the minimum wage and get rid of tips, and it was kind of highlighted very quickly. And there's a couple of people that again are very active within the group, and they have very good connections within the council and various other things with the mayor, and they got on board very quickly with it and got a lot of they went to the council meetings and they went to the meetings of the mayoral meetings and stuff, and they stood up for the industry and they basically got it quashed. But there was a lot of these people were basically going into businesses trying to get to employees saying this was a really good idea, you'll be guaranteed this much money, which obviously a lot of people were saying, look, your wages will literally be cut in half, if you go to an hourly rate. And there was a lot on the industry side, basically saying, look, this is the pros and cons of this. This is what you need to understand. So there was a lot of information there for people to actually make up their minds. And if they were approached, obviously what they could say, obviously don't speak to these people, and like I say, they keep you very abreast of what's going on.
Yeah,
so
very cool.
It might be worth starting something. But anyway, all right, Kieron, this was great to talk to you.
And you too, mate. Really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
So thanks very much, Fergal. That was a really good and interesting conversation, and we will most certainly do it again in the next few weeks, see how things have changed, progressed, because this is a fast-moving thing that we are at the centre of. It is a tsunami, if you will. It just feels like wave after wave after wave, and at some point those waves, they will start to break down, and when they do, we will start to see our way through this. And the sense of community that Fergal talked about through the Washington district, that's the kind of thing that will get us through this, and we need to stay strong with that, and we need to keep that at the forefront of our minds. So thank you again to our sponsors, the guys at Tahola, HGEM and Vita Mojo. Without you guys, we couldn't keep doing this, so thank you for your time. Thank you very much for lending us your ears, we do appreciate it.
We need more help, call the whole town. Now let's try and get this thing off the ground. All in together, let's gather round. We're gonna try and get this thing off the ground.